Hello everyone and welcome back to It's Tech Time. In today's video we're going to be covering how to take snapshots and backups of your virtual elements inside of Proxmox. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with a virtual machine. I'm going to go to my Kali box here, and if you look in the middle menu there's a backup option along with a snapshot section. So the difference between a snapshot and a backup is that a backup is completely separate from the virtual machine itself. A backup is a full clone of the disk that you can move. You can move it to a shared storage if you happen to have a Synology NAS connected to your Proxmox server, which is something I'm going to do in a later video, but the same policy will apply to any type of shared storage that you have in your network. And along with that, Proxmox has its own Proxmox backup server version, which I'm not going to be getting into in this video series because frankly I don't have the equipment to do it. But if you do have the equipment to handle that on hand, you're welcome to look that up. Now a snapshot on the other hand is actually a part of the virtual machine itself. You cannot actually take that snapshot and move it over to a different storage system. Snapshots are actually a part of the virtual machine disk itself, not a clone of the virtual machine like a backup is. So when should you use the backup feature and when should you use the snapshot? And the short answer comes down to personal preference. In my opinion, if you're testing something and just want to take a quick time and place snapshot of your virtual machine that you can go back to if something you're testing doesn't work, then a snapshot's a great fit for that as opposed to a full backup. I'm going to take a snapshot of this Kali virtual machine right now. I'm going to do take snapshot. And let's just say that I'm about to run a lot of updates on it. So I'm going to name it before running updates. Now Proxmox has this cool feature where you can include RAM, where not only do you get a snapshot of the virtual machine itself, but you also get what's in random access memory as well. And this can be pretty cool if you're running a high volatile program of some kind, but I don't need it right now, so I'm going to uncheck that. And if you notice I have an error message for the name, it's because of the spaces in the name, so I'm going to take the spaces out. So now I'm going to click take snapshot, and as you can see that was pretty fast. So now if I close out of this, I'll see my snapshot right here and when it was created, and I didn't change anything, so everything's still the same. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go to the VM itself and run updates, and then I'm going to show you the process of falling back to the snapshot. I'm going to go to my console. This is my Kali Linux machine, and I'll go to the terminal, run sudo apt update and sudo apt upgrade. I'm going to go ahead and pass it the Y option so it won't prompt me, and I'm going to let that run. And it's finished running updates. Now let's say that an update failed to run or something all of a sudden wasn't running right after the update took place and you needed to roll back your virtual machine to what it was like before you ran updates. Well, to do that, we'll simply go back to snapshots and click on the snapshot that we previously took and click roll back. I'm going to ask if we're sure. We're going to hit yes to confirm, and that was a pretty quick process. And since I unchecked the include RAM option, the state of my machine was not saved, so it shut itself down. So I'm going to right click on it and tell it to start, and then log back in, back at the command line, and if I go up I don't see an option for apt update having been ran, and if I do sudo apt get update, and so the machine's back to its original state. You can see how that would be useful if you were testing an application or a program of some kind, regardless of the operating system you're using. And so snapshots are really pretty self-explanatory in my opinion. So let's now move to taking a backup of a virtual machine. So we're going to click the backup, and taking a backup of a virtual machine gives you a few more options. We're going to click backup. Here you can choose where you want to store the backup at. Right now I only have local storage available, but if you had a network attached storage mapped to your Proxmox server, you could choose that here as well. And right now I'm just going to stick it on this local storage, which honestly doesn't have a whole lot of space available, but it's a good rule of thumb that if you could have a offsite storage location or a network storage mapped to it, to store these backups somewhere like that, so that if something happened to your Proxmox server, you still have that backup to go to. And then we have the mode option, which gives you three options: one for snapshot, one option for suspend, and then you got stop. Now each of these modes relates to how much downtime you're willing to sacrifice while taking this backup. So if you have a virtual machine that absolutely cannot go down, your options are limited. First I'm going to talk about stop mode. If you were to choose stop mode, it's going to literally shut the machine down when it takes the snapshot. The Proxmox initiates the shutdown procedure for that virtual machine, and then once the virtual machine is fully shut down, it would then take a backup of it. And then once it's finished running the backup, if the virtual machine was running when the process started, it would start the virtual machine back up. But if the virtual machine was already shut down when it started taking the backup, it's going to leave it in a shutdown state. And that's the stop option. We also have an option for suspend. And suspend mode on Proxmox is similar to suspend mode on like your laptop or your desktop. If you haven't used the machine for a certain amount of time, it will go into suspend mode to save power. And then to resume your laptop or your desktop, you just push the key or shake the mouse and it comes back to life. And so Proxmox in this situation is going to do basically the same thing. It's going to put your VM into suspend mode, and then once it's in suspend mode, it will take a backup. And then once it's finished making that backup, it will resume the virtual machine where it was at. Now, the virtual machine will still not be accessible at all while it is in the suspended mode. So if you have a virtual machine that needs to be highly available, you cannot use suspend mode to take a backup of it. And the other option is snapshot mode. Now, the snapshot mode for backup is not the same thing as taking a snapshot of the virtual machine. And in my opinion, when taking a backup in Proxmox, snapshot mode is the mode that I would recommend you use because it results in the least amount of downtime for the virtual machine. And what snapshot mode does is in the background, the virtual machine is taking a live backup of the virtual machine while it is running. And that's actually what I'm going to use here. So I'm going to click backup. And now that that is done, if you'll look back at the log at the beginning of it, you'll see that it actually issued a freeze command. So it's in snapshot mode, so it freezed everything real quick to take the snapshot, and then it thought it so the VM could continue running. And that allows it to create a backup with the minimum amount of downtime possible. So we close that, and right here we'll see the backup that it just created. If you ever needed to restore from this backup, you would just select the backup, select restore, and you could change the storage if you wanted to, but the defaults are going to be fine for my situation. I'm basically just going to restore the backup where the current virtual machine is at. So I'm going to click restore. And it gives you a warning saying that it's going to erase permanently the VM data that is currently running, which is fine because we haven't changed anything. So I'm going to click yes. And this is actually a pretty cool safety feature where it complains that the VM is actually running right now. So what you have to do first is go over to the VM, right click on it and tell it to shut down. We're going to say yes to confirm. And now that it is shut down, we'll select the backup, we'll click restore. We're going to leave everything the default and click restore. Going to confirm. And it says it has successfully finished. And then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to click my virtual machine. I'm going to go to the console and I'm going to tell it to start. And it looks like it's successfully restored from the backup. Now, manually doing a backup is great, but if you don't automate this in some way, you'll probably do like I do all the time and forget to do it. So what you can do is you can go up to data center view, where before we were running backups on the VM level itself. In the data center view, what you can do is go to backup in its menu. And now these backup options apply to every node that is in the data center. So if I had another node clustered in, these settings will apply to it as well. But right now, all I have is the one node. So this backup setting is only going to apply to it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add a task, and this is going to create a backup job. And so this is going to automate creating a backup for me. So what you can do, if you had more than one node, you can select each individual node and create a separate job for each of them. Or you can leave it at the default all, which would be every node in your cluster if you had more than one. And so I switched over to my main Proxmox node to show you what I'm talking about. And I'm going to click on the rule that I already have scheduled. I'm going to click at it so you can see the settings. And so it's applying to all my nodes. I have two nodes in a cluster over here. So the data center's backup option for all is applying to both of these nodes. And then you can choose where you want the storage location to be. It defaults to your local storage, but I have a Synology network attached storage going on. And so that's where I'm saving my backups at. You can select the schedule for the backups. It can be every 30 minutes, every 2 hours, every day. It can only be on Mondays. It can only be Monday through Friday. It's pretty flexible. And then there's a selection mode. You can include selected VMs, like I'm only backing up selected VMs. I can click all. Will include not only every VM and every container I currently have, but then it will also grandfather in any newly created VMs. You could exclude certain VMs, or you can do it based off of a pool, which is something I haven't got into yet. But for me, in this situation, I'm just doing selected VMs. And what I can do is I can come in here and select different virtual machines as needed and then click OK. And now that I'm sitting in here looking at my settings on this already scheduled backup job, I'm going to switch it to all so that it will automatically back up everything I have and it will grandfather in anything newly created. You can choose to have an email sent if there's a failure in the backup job, or you can send it every time the backup job runs, which is what I have here. I'm going to change that to failure only, to be honest with you. And then you can choose the compression level. In my opinion, the fast and good default is more than good enough for most of your situations out there. And again, you can choose mode, which we've already went over this in the backup section on the individual virtual machine. So you already know the definitions behind this. And again, I'm of the opinion that the snapshot mode is the best option because of the minimum amount of downtime that it offers you. And so now I'm going to click OK, and it's going to edit that backup job. And as you can see from the output here, it tells you when the next time it's going to run is, and it tells you where it's going to be stored at, and it tells you the retention policy for every 7 days. If I go back to my settings, that's under this retention label. You can choose to keep all backup. You can keep only the last 7. You can keep the 7 daily, monthly, hourly, weekly. Pretty easy to go there. There's a note template. Notes are added to each backup job created by this job. I haven't put the guest name on each of them. And then there's some advanced settings that are beyond the scope of this video. If you made it this far in the video, I thank you so much for joining me and watching this video. I suggest that you hit the like button down below and you hit subscribe so that when my video on how to add a network attached storage comes out, you'll get a notification about it. And I will see everybody in the next video.